Well, hey again, everyone. It's Rob Ryder, and it is Saturday, August 5th, 2023. And today, Unraveling DD214 Lies Lied by Liars. It's chock full of them. Get into that in a minute. I am Staff Sergeant Robert Allen Vertluski, U.S. Army veteran, also known as Rob Ryder. My email address is courtofrecord@AOL.com, and YouTube, you can find me at Rob Ryder, ROBBBRYDER. And keep in mind that U.S. Army does mean Uncle Sam ain't released me yet. Because as I'm going to show you, it doesn't really matter what branch you're in. Although what I'm going to be showing you is Army specific. You can find the regulations or procedures for your own branch for the same thing. That if you take the regulation and a DD214, the regulation for DD214s and start reading it, you'll see, well, this thing is full of errors, which I don't think surprises anybody. And a lot of people have tried to get their records corrected using the system that they're told to use, and well, they may get something back like you did not exhaust your administrative remedies. Which would mean, well, there's something you could have done before you went to this board. As it turns out, with the DD214, there is such a thing, that you can have it corrected, right? And there's a certain thing that's supposed to have been done, and and that's what this will be about. So, if you're a veteran or still in the military, you might want to get a piece of paper and pencil and write down these regulations as I start going through them. So that, even if you're not in that branch, you can get what the name of the regulation is and then go say, your branch with that name and see what you find. Or however you find these is up to you. But normally once you find one and start reading it, it'll lead you to where the other ones are because it will reference them in the narrative that's in the regulation. So without further ado, let me see. What do I want to show first? So last week on Sunday, I had uploaded a video called DD Form 214, which is the proper name, Form, DD Form 214, Facts, Fables, and Fictions, in which I was saying, well, here's the Army Regulation, AR 635-8, right? And it governs separation documents and so forth, and, that it would be worth looking at. Well, it got removed because I was using all my own documents to have all the information on them. And they said I was showing public information online and it was in violation of their standard terms and conditions, and so they removed it. Well, not much I can do about it. So what I need to do now is try to show a very sanitized version of, I'm not even going to try to do the same thing anymore because I've moved past what I was talking about then, which is really what I'm going to talk about now. But you need to know where to go find this information, for your own head to say, yeah, the dude's correct, right? And maybe try the same thing and see if we find somebody who will give us relief. Whatever branch it is first, good on them, right? The idea is pierce the veil and get this thing figured out, and, it will be good for everybody. So, hang on just a second. I guess I should say, if you've not watched my videos before and you're a veteran or family of a veteran or a service member, as far as that goes, or family of a service member, right? This all applies to everybody in the military family because at the end of the day, none of us have been released from the military. Uncle Sam ain't released me yet. It's true, right? You're still in the military. I'm going to show you in the regulation where it says this DD214 has nothing to do with your status in the military as far as being released. So a few weeks ago, I did a video called AWOL Veterans, right? Return to Military Control. And that was based on my DD214 that I did not sign. And they have a little, statement in there that I have to go look at to remember exactly what it is. But at the end of the day, if I didn't sign it, according to regulation, that means I was in absentia, which is only used for a few things, which specifically, if you're on AWOL or been, dropped from the rolls as a deserter. Well, if that's happened, as I was showing this video, where they had taken some guy who was AWOL, he went AWOL like a month before he was supposed to get out, back in the 68, 69, during the Vietnam War. So like a month before he was to be released, he went AWOL. And 6 years later, they found him and they brought him back. Well, in that time, he had been AWOL for 6 years. He had been going to the VA for mental illness condition. And that never got reported back to the Army if this guy was coming to the VA. Right? So just because you go to the VA doesn't mean that you're not AWOL or a deserter. Right? There errors in the records. That's all it takes. Right? If somebody wants to put error in a record to keep this ship from being transferred back and forth, it can happen. But so this guy who went AWOL, when he went back to the Army, then he was returned to military control, which is the important thing, right? If you're AWOL or a deserter, you want to be returned to military control. That was for me, right? If you're saying I'm AWOL because you put in that I didn't sign my DD-214, therefore I was discharged in absentia, apparently that means that I'm AWOL or a deserter, and I, deny the charge. I want to be returned to military control and, clear my good name. And in his case, he didn't do any of that. I mean, he was AWOL. Apparently, he went back. They said, yeah, you got a mental problem, and they sent him to the hospital. But now he was back in military control as the rank that he had been when he left, with all his rights and everything, but now he was a patient. And they ended up doing an evaluation, giving him a 70% disability evaluation, and then retiring him. So now he got retirement pay. Right? But he didn't get his back pay because he didn't have the signature of a certain person he needed to have. And all that's in this video, AWOL veterans, right? It's just kind of interesting how that started. But from that, it's like, okay, well, let me go look to see what all is on a DD Form 214 and what needs to be put in there and where it comes from and so forth and so on. And that's governed by this Army Regulation 8, AR 635-8. Right? AR 635-8, separation, processing, and documents. So you're definitely going to want to download this one, right, if you are following along for that purpose, because in here it starts to give, in the first one, who's responsible for what. And as we go down here, this commander, U.S. Army Installation Management Control, is responsible for ensure that all information on DD Form 214 and other separation documents is accurate. The DD Form 214 is of vital importance to a separating soldier and must be properly prepared according to prescribed guidance. No deviation is authorized. Okay, well, then what's the prescribed guidance? It's this regulation. This regulation is going to say what's supposed to go in those blocks. No deviation is authorized. So if they didn't do it exactly the way it says for them to do it, then it wasn't done properly. And why that's important is because all these different blocks have data in them, and if they're doing a data sort on a particular block based on a particular style information, and yours doesn't have that on there, it's not going to see your record, although what they're talking about applies to you. And this is how they keep, us from showing up and these still in the military, still getting paid with an ID card. Right? It's like we've been dropped from the rolls somehow, or we're missing, or there's something that's happened. And yet we have this thing called a DD Form 214, and this thing is stuck full of errors. So, well, it's this guy's fault. Right? Well, this commander is responsible for the installation transition processing. Right? So now they talk about these transition facilities, transition centers, right? So that is, as we'll see, right, that's the place that's in, let me go look real quick. Hang on, I got to look at it. Right, that's this station where separated. Either it has its own transition center or it's attached to a transition center. But whatever that transition center that goes with this station where separated, that would be the people then that are responsible for this frickin' AR 635-8, right, with the Installation Management Command. They're responsible for it. And there's actually of course there is, right? There's a regulation on this U.S. Installation Management Command, and it'll tell you it's like that every base, every garrison is like a small city, and so this is like City Hall. They're responsible for everything that happens in the city, and so you're going in and out of that city is something they're responsible for because you had to, they have to keep track of every 100% of all persons assigned to the military every day. Well, something's falling through the cracks, so I'm saying that's who's the problem is, right? So we went on to here, separation requirements, discussed below our administrative process requirements. All these different things you're supposed to do as part of your out processing, which I can't say it all applies to me because this is written for today, and I ETS back in 1988. But hey, we're all in the same military, right? But it's all the same to me. One other thing I want to point out is they talk about this Army Military Human Resource Record, which is not just your official military file, right? But it's also like your pay file and all sorts of different files that go into this overall file called the Army Military Human Resource Record. Well, I've tried to get that before, and I've not had any luck. I'm still trying to get it now, and I haven't had any luck. But we'll talk about that more in just a second. Separation orders, right? That's what. So the other thing then is when you go, if you have an official military OMPF, official military personnel file, I think it's called. You look in there, like in mine, I don't have a separation order. There's no orders in there that says I was ever released from the military. Right? But that's what I was supposed to be doing according to my DD-214. I was, administrative separation, and I don't have one. So, there's just another error. I mean, error upon error upon error. But, the Transition Center procedures review DD Form 214, safeguard to finalize DD 214, right? It's the Transition Center's deal. They have to do it. Publication separation order. So I never got one. Continue down just real quick here then. Then we get to right here. Preparing separation documents. DD Form 214 is not intended to have any legal effect on termination of a soldier's service. All right, we've not been terminated from the service. If that's the case, then according to the Geneva Convention, I think it's the third Geneva Convention to do with prisoners of war, that all members of the military must be issued military ID. Well, if you're saying I haven't been released and I want my military ID and they refuse to give it to me, well, that would put the United States then as violated international law in a peace treaty or international treaty, right? The Geneva Convention. It says the same thing in the DoD Law of War Manual, right? That they have to, all members of the military have to have military ID issued to them. But just because you don't have one doesn't mean you don't have one, right? It just means you ain't got one, but they have one, right? You're still in the military. So if you were going to court for some reason, you need to yell loud and clear, look, I'm in the military. You have to get a release from the military. Which is another thing I talked about, that AWOL veterans. If you go in that, watch that video, and somebody who's got a problem with the court, it says in the regulation I'm showing in there that, you can be released to the civil authority to go to court. But for that to happen, there's a paper trail. And basically the military has to give permission to the civilian court for you to be there. Right? So there's a form that had to have been filed from the military with the court. And if that isn't there, then it's proof that the court didn't do what they're supposed to do by regulation to have you released to them for court. And that could be a traffic ticket or foreclosure, tax issue. It doesn't matter. If you're in court, they got to have you released. And if it's a criminal matter and they're saying we're going to charge you by an indictment of a grand jury, well, then that's unconstitutional because the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution states that if you're in the military, Army, Navy, That's what it says. We're going to say all military. That you are exempt from being charged by the indictment of a grand jury. You need to be charged under Article 30 of the UCMJ, which is for charges and specifications. But short of that, they can't, it's unconstitutional to try somebody who's in the military. And so since this DD-214 didn't take a veteran out of the military, that would include all veterans, by the indictment of a grand jury. Right? So, if you're in court, tell the fucking judge. That's all I can tell you. I mean, I don't know what to do about it. I said, well, that's what it says. You got to get him to buy into it. But don't blame the judge. Blame the prosecutor who brought you there. Say, Judge, I'm in the military. Right? Where's the release from the military for me to be in this court? Did you know, Judge, that it's unconstitutional for me to be tried by the indictment of a grand jury? And bring in a copy of the Fifth Amendment and show it to him. Right? But because the judge is the one that can get you out of there. The prosecutor is the one that brought you to his court. Right? So it's the prosecutor's fault. Or your adversary, whoever the adversary is. They had to go to the military to get you released. They didn't do it. It's not your fault, not the judge's fault. But until you tell the judge that's the deal, well, how is he supposed to know? Okay, safeguarding. Hey, this is important stuff. You must safeguard. Okay, the DD Form 214 will be prepared in accordance with paragraph 5-6 below. No deviation is authorized. Well, we read earlier, had to be, per the prescribed whatever, and this is the prescribed whatever, paragraph 5-6. Do it this way or it's wrong. The information on all copies of DD-14 must be legible. Each block must have an entry, and when data is not applicable, enter NA, none, or hyphens as appropriate. And block 18, issue any providing, well, I guess that's not so important yet. Advise, Then we get down to here, right? So now each of these blocks goes to a block on a DD-214. Starting at block 1 and going all the way down to block 22. I guess that's not the one we want. Where's this one? So you also need to know this. If you only have a copy of member 1, it ends at 22. But the DD-214 has 8 copies to it. Some of these copies are what they call the long form, and it has all this other information on here. Yet there's other ones like that where it's the long one, but they, for whatever reason, they blank this line out, right? So you need to be looking at like copy 2 or copy 4, which is your long form copy, but it's not the one they give you. But there's a little box down here to check, right? Member requires copy 4. Request copy 4. Is that on this one here? Right there. Member request. Go back this one here. Well, they even have it on here that you can request it. Yeah, so you wouldn't even know you were asking for it on this one. Anyways, going back to this, let's just go to the simple one. So you got block 1 all the way down to block, looks like 30. Well, all those are covered by this regulation. AR 635-8, where it says in block 1, compare original enlistment contract or appointment order and review official record for possible name changes. If a name change has occurred, list the other names of record in block 18. So in my last video, the one that they took off, I was showing, well, here's what mine has on there. Here's my enlistment contract, what it has on it, so forth and so on. So if you have your official military personnel file, besides the DD-214, you're going to find in there a form of a DD Form 4, right? DD Form 4. And this is the enlistment contract. This is the thing that you go back here far enough and you'll see that's where you Right, take your oath of office, right, and oath of enlistment. And then it's, whoever administers is on there. So, this is a contract that's been agreed to by both parties, you and the military. And your agreement is with the Armed Forces of the United States. Now, if you're a veteran and you have a discharge certificate, take a look at it. It'll say you were discharged from the Armed Forces of the United States of America. Well, that's not who I have a contract with. I have a contract, the Armed Forces of the United States. And this contract says, where's that at here? It's in Block 9. Right, for all enlistees and re-enlistees. Right, that you understand so you understand that if you're in the military, these next things apply. Entitled to receive pay allowances and other benefits as provided by law and regulation. If you've not been released from the military, they have to pay you. And the way they get around this, that you're still in the military, is that during a time of war, they can extend your enlistment to 6 months after the end of the war. Well, we're always at war. They're always starting another war because we're talking lowercase w war. Right? It doesn't have to be entitled to anything. It's just any kind of armed conflict is a war. So, and then the other one you have in there is this a record of military processing, Armed Forces of the United States. Again, not Armed Forces of the United States of America, Armed Forces of the United States. This is like the very first document that the recruiter starts filling out for you. So if there's any recruiters who are watching this, please email me. And I'd like to talk to you about this form because, maybe you can help me put some pieces together. But what I find very interesting on these is if you look at current address and home of record address, look at how the address is. Street, city, county, state, country, zip code. Street, city, county, state, country, zip code. 10955 14 Mile Road. Rockford, Kent, Michigan, United States, zip code. Home of record address. Street, city, county, state, country, zip code. So whenever you need to give a proper address, or I'm saying this must be the thing they call your permanent address then, because that was another thing. What's the permanent address? Well, we're not using, you usually use the street, city, and the state with a zip code. So, right, home of record, street, city, county, state, country, zip code. Place of enlistment, military installation, city, state, zip code. No, isn't that entry? Now I got a zip code because mine didn't have zip code. Because like my place of enlistment would say MEPS, Detroit, MI for Michigan, but there's no zip code after it. But on the DD-214, it just says place you entered, Detroit, Michigan. It doesn't say MEPS. So, again, they just, as you go through each line, you find all these different errors. And so just to give you an idea of the things I was finding, that I've sent mine to the Fort Belvoir VA Transition Center, because Fort Belvoir is the name of the last place I served. That's on my DD-214. Right? And it contains unauthorized deviations, FN policy found in Army Regulation AR-6358, which is rules for completing the DD Form 214. Other errors will be described, Right, so like in Block 1, name, AR-6358 requires compare original enlistment contract. My enlistment contract is allegedly the re-enlistment document, right, the DD Form 4. The name style used in Block 2 of my DD Form 4 of my DD Form 1966 is Rytlewski Robert Allen without a comma after Rytlewski, which differs from Rytlewski, Robert Allen in Block 1 of my DD-214. Be advised that Robert A. Rytlewski, Robert A., Robert Allen, Rytlewski are other styles of the names of record, none of which are listed in Block 18 as required by AR 635-8, which said if there's another form of name, put it used, then put it in block 18, which is like where all the remarks go. So you can see now that if one record has your name without a comma, and the other name has it with a comma, and that's the only difference, is the jot and tittle, the comma, that if you're searching for Rutluski Robert Allen without a comma, then you're not going to find any records that have the comma. And if you're searching for with a comma, then you're not going to find the ones without a comma. So you would never get all the records. And so this is the important thing about the military. They don't do records by your name. They do records by your Social Security number. Right? Your Social Security number is the controlling identifier of your records, no matter what name is on them. So, okay, so let's go back then and look at, where the hell was I? I had too many things open here. Because there's another one. In Block 2, Department Component Branch. The Army, authorized, da-da-da. Okay. Social Security number. Date of birth. Verify data accuracy by reviewing original enlistment contract. All right, and or whatever. So on my enlistment contract, they had it 5 September 1958. But on the DD, that's on my DD Form 4, right? They spelled out the month and did it in this order. But on your 214, it's this way, right? With the last 2 digits of the year, the month, and the date, and the day of the month. Well, that's not the same, right? So it's, again, it's different. If you're looking for them this way, you're not going to find these, and vice versa. So, if they have to be the same, then by God, make them all the same. All right, Block 6, place of entry into active duty. All right, mine says Detroit, Michigan, but place of enlistment on my DD Form 4 is MEPS Detroit MI, and now I'm seeing it should be MEPS Detroit MI with a zip code. Now, the thing about the DD Form 214 is it's changed over time. So on mine, there is no home of record on my DD 214 as required in Block 7 of the ones they're using now. Right? But on my DD Form 1966, there was, and it had, the road number, the name of the road, city, county, state, but doesn't have country after it. Home of record address, so forth and so on. So all these things are, right, because now that's what I'm saying. Mine didn't have it at the time. Well, now it has city, street, city, county, state, country, zip code. That's the way they want it on the damn form. So if yours isn't that way, then it's not right. Block 9, command. They may have done that right after all. It doesn't matter. Remarks. No mandatory remarks required by 635.8 have been entered. If you were looking at the regulation, there's all sorts of mandatory remarks that shouldn't be in there. Contact address, Block 19, data source provided soldier. Well, how can I give them an address? This address must be a permanent address. That's what it says, right? Data source is as provided by soldier. This address must be a permanent address. Without defining what constitutes a permanent address. Well, I'm saying, well, maybe that's what this is now, but they don't tell you that. They don't call this a permanent address. They call it a home of record. Well, is that the same as a permanent address? So, they need to tell me what it is so I can tell them what mine is. So nor is there any explanation how a soldier gave this data source to the individual preparing the DD Form 214 or where the soldier would find a permanent address. I did not sign my DD Form 214, so how could I provide the damn address? Block 19 of my DD Form 214 is entitled mailing address after separation, but I have no idea what my permanent address is, as the term is undefined. I could assume it's the same style as required on DD Form 1966, but I require the term permanent address be defined as evidenced by an Army regulation that proves a permanent address is a soldier's permanent address. As an Army regulation requires, I use a permanent address. In other words, if you're telling me I got to have one, then tell me what it is. How am I supposed to know? I don't even know what you mean by permanent address. And that's, this is the system that we're in where all this shit matters. It's the jots and tittles we're talking about. The devil is in the details. Well, Great thing about the military is they're very detailed. So that's where you're going to find the devil. You're going to find them in an Army regulation, right? They didn't put your name in your paperwork properly. You found the devil. Get them to do it right, you kick the devil out. Block 21, signature or member. I did not sign my DD-214 according to AR 6358. Soldier not available to sign is the authorized data for someone allegedly separated in absentia. Instead, the unauthorized deviation, member unavailable for signature, was inserted on my DD-214. Right? It needs to say soldier not available to sign, but it doesn't say that. It says member unavailable for signature. And so if it says anything other than soldier not available to sign, and you didn't sign it, then it's wrong. My understanding is that separated in absentia is for soldiers considered AWOL or dropped from the rolls, both of which I object to. Block 23, type of separation, proper type of designation, discharge, right, proper case, instead of discharge, uppercase, right? I don't know if that's a big deal, but hey, it said if it was a deviation to note it, so that's what I'm doing. If I find something, I'm going to note it. I wanted to tell somebody. Block 26, separation code, right? This is a different regulation. This is Army Regulation AR 635-5-1, and this will apply probably for all branches. But this is what tells you what these the different codes are, right? So this code goes. Oh, where the hell are you? That code goes right here, separation code. And here's the narrative that goes with that code. So in this Army regulation I was just talking about, wouldn't it be not just the code, but the narrative that goes with it? Right, Army Regulation 635-5-1. It says for official use only, but that's not a security classification. It just means it's for official use, and I'm talking to other members of the military, so this is as official as it can get. Separation Program Designator. Right, this is the thing that if you go down here, right, these are for officer personnel. Go a little bit farther, and we're going to find for enlisted personnel. I have a JBK in mind, which completion of required active service has this AR 635-200. Chapter 4 is the regulatory authority. That's also on the entered onto the DD-214. But it has this note 7. Oh, and these are involuntary discharges. So it's like, well, I wasn't involuntarily discharged. I just didn't re-enlist. Well, if that had been the case, right, which it is, they could have put this one instead. They could use KBK, completion of required active service. So all this information is the same, except it has a different note, right? And so what are these notes then? Going on this note 7, except for those with a DCSS in force, well, then that would, that's a form of some kind, and it would have to be in my official military personnel file, and there isn't one, so I don't have one. Enforced to be used for RA, regular Army soldiers, ineligible for, barred from, or otherwise denied reenlistment that were separated on completion of enlistment. And it's like, well, that's a lie by liars. That didn't happen. But, that it's wrong, so you got to get it fixed. So we're still going through the shit that's wrong, right? But there you go. It's got the wrong words in there. Additionally, had I been separated in accordance with AR 635-200 Chapter 4 listed in Block 25, Separation Authority, as indicated by DD-214, there would be evidence in my OMPF of having received separation counseling and other steps in the process, such as letters, notices, memorandums, administrative separation order, so forth and so on. So I'm not going to go look at it now, but if, whatever block, or whatever regulation they have in This block right here. So now we're talking about, you got the separation code, the separation authority. So whatever has been listed in here, you can find that regulation. And you'll see in there that if they're doing these things, and here's the order that has to be written. Here's the memorandum that has to be written. All this documentation that had to be written for this transaction to happen. There's no evidence of it in your official military personnel file. At least in mine. I can't say it's the same for everybody. I'm just saying there isn't anything like that in mine. And I have a reentry code of mine that RE-1A or A1 or whatever it is, which back in 1988 meant that I could reenlist. No bar to reenlistment. And yet they said I'm barred from reenlistment. And they gave me a code that has it, and then it has certain words that are supposed to go down here. But those aren't the words that are down here in mine. Right? Again, this is find this regulation, find out what you have, and whatever this says is what needs to be in them boxes. If it's got JBK, then it has to say completion of required active service in the narrative. And then this regulatory authority is what goes, I think it's block 25, right? This is the authority that discharged you or did whatever's happening to you at this particular time. So you have all these errors. It's like, well, it's obvious there's errors. What do you do about it? Right? Let's continue on and see what we're supposed to do about it. And anyways, I didn't go through the regulation with you, but all these different blocks, right? Everything that's supposed to have been done is in this regulation. Every block is accounted for. Just go to whatever the block number is and see what it says and go look at yours, see if it has it. If not, make a note what this says it should have and what yours has. Right? When a soldier's not available, separated in absentia, enter soldier not available assignment. Mine didn't have that. And if I had been separated in absentia, well, that's an indication that I'm either AWOL or dropped from the rolls. Wrong. Right? SBD codes, right? For official use only. AR 635-5-1. You can download it online. So apparently it's not a problem using it. Narrative reason for separation. This is based on regulatory or other authority, can be checked against cross-reference AR 635-5-1. That's whatever that says has to be in there, But it wasn't. Okay. Well, then they had the best part to the end, right? That enlisted soldiers, currently regular Army, commander. So this has to do with when errors are detected prior to digital signature, the transition center will make corrections to any defective separation documents. The transition center. Right, which is under the general we saw, it's like 1-11, right? IMCOM or something like that. So, but after soldier separation date, will be corrected by forwarding a memorandum to the appropriate location below, requesting that the new DD Form 214 be done. But so when I first read this, I said, oh, I could do that. I hadn't read this. Issuing Transition Center may correct an error. Right? They can contact these people. I tried contacting them directly. I didn't get the answer I wanted, which made me go back and look at this and say, oh, it's supposed to be the Transition Center that contacts them. But they're supposed to be able to contact, these offices here and, fix your records. And these are at Human Resources. So I'm waiting to see if that happens or not. But while I'm waiting, I was still doing a little more research on it. So anyways, I was showing you, I had written this up, and I sent it to, because in mine it was U.S. Army Fort Belvoir, right? That was the Transition Center, which so because I was able to figure out, well, it's Fort Belvoir, right? And they do have this Personnel Division. And the email, it had IMCOM. See, it says Belvoir, IMCOM. And ICOM is actually this U.S. Army Installation Management Command that apparently they manage all the garrisons at each of the forts. I mean, the forts have a name, but the ones that are in charge of the garrisons within the fort is this command called ICOM, who's the one responsible for what's in your DD-214, which is full of errors. So, it's their fault. So I contacted them, and I got an email back. That's why I sent this blah, blah to them showing right here. Right? And I sent it by email with the copy of my DD-214 and my 1099, or not 1099, DA Form 1966 and DA Form 4, right? And all these things that were wrong. And they emailed me back. All right, and this, came from admin, Director of Human Resources, Military Personnel Division, Fort Belvoir, saying you can contact the Transition Center for the corrections. And she gave me this email address, which, when I went and looked up that email address, go back here. Make sure it takes me to the right one. Right, it took me to the Personnel Processing Branch. So we were looking at the Military Personnel Division. Now we're at the Personnel Processing Branch. So this is like the first time where somebody sent me to somebody else in their chain of command instead of sending you to someplace outside of the command. And if you've ever, been sent on the rat race trying to get something done at the county or a court or whatever, and they say, no, you got to go to this office, and oh, no, you got to take it over here, and, they're never sending you to somebody within their own department that's supposed to do something with it. But she did. And by she, I mean right, Glenda L. Payne, Admin, Directorate of Human Resources. So I sent something to them now, and I'm waiting to hear what they had to say. But going back to this website then, I'm reading this, and they're talking about, soldiers' actions. Processing of soldiers 4187 are submitted through unit level S1 to Military Personnel Division to include actions requiring Human Resources Command approval. Right, through the Military Personnel Division. Let's go back up. Military Personnel Division. Okay, so it probably have to go through them. But what's this form they're talking about? And by gosh, right, we're talking about a personal action statement. Right, so like this is the document you would use if you were in the military and you wanted to get something done for yourself. Right, you want to go to a service school or ROTC or check the box, whatever it is you want to do. Fill the form out, send it in, it gets approved or it doesn't get approved, whatever it takes. But this is the document that does it. Right? So like they have one here for identification cards. So, I want to check that box. Tell them I want my ID card because I don't have one. Then I had this duty status change, right? The above soldier's duty status is changed from, how about drop from the rolls to active duty, effective something at some particular hours, or actually return to military control. And so forth. So, it said, okay, paraphrasing then, fill this form out and send it to Glenda. So I haven't quite done this yet. Right? I tried, because I hadn't actually sent the form, I had sent the letter I sent. When she said to contact this other office, I just CC'd her that I sent it to them, the same thing that I sent to her, right, without actually doing this form yet. But now having looked at the form a bit, right, the authority is 10 U.S.C. 7013, and this is the statute that has to do with the Secretary of the Army, right? So under his authority, basically under this statute is the authority. Then this DAPAM 600.8, which you can Google and find it, so forth and so on. And then for additional information, see System of Records Notice. And this is a really big deal. You're going to want to, we're going to look at this in just a second, because I didn't know this existed either. This is something brand new. But because I don't really know what to put for through or to or from yet, I haven't done anything. That was one of the reasons. Then it has, name, last, first, middle initial. Well, anymore, I don't claim to have a middle initial. I don't even claim to have a middle name. My name is Robert Allen would be my first name. Rytlewski is my last name. So here I put Rytlewski, Robert Allen, without any comma, and say, well, that's, or with a comma, after my first name, if that's how they want me to have it. But, which way do they want my name? Do they want it the way it's on my DD Form 4, the way it's on my DD 214, the way it's on my DD 1966, the way it's on my birth record? Which way do you really want it? Because things in parentheses aren't necessarily there. But anyways, all these things that have a Army regulation next to it, it's good to take a look at it. And I may have to go into this in more detail in another video because it's just a little bit too much to remember all these fine details at this point. But my point is, if you're still in the military and you wanted to do something or needed something done, well, this is how you would get it done. Fill out a personal action statement. So I'm saying, nothing's changed. I still need to do that. It's just, you don't necessarily have to do it. They can do it for you. Right? This form can be filled out by the service member or by personnel for the service member. So, this right here then led me to this system of records. So if you Google that, or you click on it, it'll take you to this thing here where you can download it, system name and number, right? Army personnel system, unclassified. So this is a system of records that has all these records in it, and this is the authority for the maintenance of all these records. You start looking at all the different places that records are coming from. This is like tying everything from all these separate, they call them stovepipe data sets, where, they don't go sideways, they only go one way, up or down, right? So there's no tie between the two, and this is supposed to be tying all this shit together. And we should all have access to this system right now, and that system is IPPSA, right? So again, this is for the Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Space Coast, Coasties. You're all going to have your own thing somehow. But this is supposed to have tied all these together, and you should be able to get access to this and go see all these records. And not have to request them from anybody. They should all be online in this frickin' system. So I'm not quite that far yet. This is just something I found last night, as a matter of fact. So, but the Army Human Resources Command and Army personnel offices at all echelons of command use the information of the system of records to manage all aspects of an individual's Army career, to include accession, retention, job classification, benefits, duty assignments, deployments, career progression, performance evaluations, military training, separation or retirement, military awards, decorations. Further, with implementation of military pay transition, APS will include management of soldiers' pay entitlements, allowances, and recording of indebtedness to federal government, which is probably what I probably owe them for my canteen or something, because I never paid for it. They put this hold on your stuff, and then you never get your pay. Right? No one told me that. I don't know that I have. I'm just saying there's probably some, like a book fine or something you didn't pay, so we're going to withhold your pay until you pay the book fine. Okay, categories of individuals covered by the system. All ALL members of the United States Army, to include active Army, National Guard, military technicians, U.S. Military Academy cadets, Army Reserve, Officer cadets enlisted basic training, all former members of the United States Army who were separated by discharge, retirement, death, or other termination of military status. So if you're a survivor of a military member, then you can have access to this. Right? Because if the service member has died, right, then you have the right to his records. Categories of records in the system, personally identifying data to include full name and other names used, social security number, DOD ID number, gender, date and place of birth, race, ethnic origin, height, weight, eye color, official identification photographs, AKO online login. Dependent family members' data may include family members' full name, other names, social security, so forth and so on. So, routine uses, policies and practices, retention and disposal of records, retrieval of records, storage of records, records access procedures. Individuals seeking access to records about them contained in this system should contact their supporting military personnel division or address written inquiries to the commander of the organization to which the service member is assigned as follows. For information on active duty, retired, and so forth, looks like we're going back to human resources again. All right, general officers. So, if you have a DD-214 and believe you've been discharged, then, the National Personnel Record Center is one place you'd send it. But if your DD-214 is full of errors, then it isn't really a DD-214 in substance. It's just a DD-214 in name. And technically, you haven't been released yet, so you're still on active duty. You're just on some status that shows you're, other than available for duty. Could be in the hospital. Could be missing in action. And I have all these in another book. I don't know if I'm going to see those or not, but maybe we will. Hang on a second. Yeah, remember I said, looking at the form, it talked about duty change, AR 608-6. Which is right here, personal accounting and strength reporting. And in here, if you go far enough in, I'm not going to keep you watching. Hang on a second. Right, here's all the different duty statuses you could have. Administrative absence, absence without leave, captured, confined in the hands of civil authorities, convalescent leave, confined in the hands of military authorities, a couple for hospital, one for interned, missing in action, or just missing, ordinary leave, present for duty, sentenced over 30 days, but less than 6 months. Sentenced by authority, sick, temporary duty, excessive leave, departed in transit, failure to gain. Departed in transit, failure to gain. Like you were headed someplace, you never made it there. And then it talks about, depending on what you're going to fall into some kind of account. Right? Either you're a trainee, you're in transit, you're a holdee, you're a patient, prisoner, separatee, student, cadet. Right? Exclusion from regular Army strength does not by itself affect status of a regular Army service member. DFS, which is drop from service, or drop from strength, right? Because here's drop from roles. Drop from strength. Let me just start with D. Soldiers who are outside of military control, whose date of RMC, return to military control, is uncertain, will not be counted as part of the active duty strength. These soldiers fall into the following two categories. Drop from roles. These soldiers are DFR, drop from role, and do not remain a member of a reporting unit. And drop from strength. These soldiers are dropped from the accountability of the Army. However, they are dropped from strength of the Army for personnel strength accounting purposes. What does that say? These soldiers are dropped from the accountability of the Army. However, they are DFS of the Army for personal strength accounting purposes. Exclusion from regular Army strength does not by itself affect status of regular Army service member. DFS, job for strength personnel, may remain entitled to pay and benefits. Except for prisoners of war and missing personnel, they remain a member of a reporting unit until separated from the service or unit from which reassigned to a higher authority. So the last place I was told to report was to the transition center. Right, that's the last type of order I have in my record is to report to a transition center. So that's my reporting unit. They're responsible for this stuff. Right, and that goes back, again, that's where these people come in. Right, the U.S. Army Installation Management Command, but they're within the personnel branch, and this is all tied to for any particular person. Then you need to look at your DD-214 and get up here, station where separated, right? Because that's the place, your last place you were seen is there, right? So they're the ones responsible to get all this stuff. That's, again, that's my opinion. That's the way I'm looking at it. I'm trying to get it figured out that way. So, yeah, lots going on. And, well, if there's an error in the record, there's an error in the records. But I didn't put it there. The commander's responsible for everything that's in them records. So unraveling DD-214, lies lied by liars. That's where we're at today, and I'm going to continue on to see if I can get access to this record set they're talking about, which would be from, right, this is where you would come to, this site here. Again, this is the Army, but every branch is going to have something of their own, but this is where you come to look at this system of records. Which is going to have, gosh knows how many different record sets in here. I mean, all these things somehow end up filtered into that one record set. And all that information you can find on whatever the personal action form is for your branch. So whatever branch you are, go look for your personal action form. And just read it line by line. Say, okay, we've got DAPAM 600-8. Well, what if I just copy that and come over here to Google and throw it in? What's it do? Well, that's how you find out, just like that. And you wait long enough and, well, you say, hey, look at that, record detail. Want a PDF? And eventually it'll open up. I want to point out to you, sometimes these things won't open, but you'll still have this information here, right? But when you're trying to, go to the military site to get your form or to get the regulation, and if it doesn't appear for some reason, if you take what is up here and you copy it, and you go to your version of whatever you're using, I'm using Adobe, right, for PDFs, and you go under File, Open, and when you get to that and say Open, you put it in here, File, Paste, right, so you're putting in what you copied from the thing, and then this will go over there and pull it over for you. So you may go to the screen directly and it won't let you do it. I mean, I can on this one, but there was another one I wasn't able to do it with. Whatever they are, right? If it isn't allowing you to see it, just go out there and copy the whole thing, take it over to Adobe and throw it into the, the file you want it to open, and it will open it for you. All right, there it is. Okay. Well, that's, just a broad overview of what's going on today. And I'd have had a lot more to show. I mean, specifically, if they had not have removed my last video, and because they did, now I got to be careful what I put in. So hopefully this one stays up. But unraveling the DD214, lies lied by liars. That's the plan for the day, for the week. All right, y'all have a great day. I hope you found it useful. See you now.